Porzingis and DeJounte Murray mean respectively for their teams. We're going to talk about all that and more on today's NBA Central.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. Kristaps Porzingis is set to make his return in his season debut against the Los Angeles Clippers tonight. Kristaps Porzingis, who's well ahead of the initial timeline for his return, which would have originally put him returning around the end of December. He now comes back about a full month early in making his return tonight for the Boston Celtics, who are already one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. This was broken by Shams Charania, as almost everything is, and there had been some growing hope over the last couple of weeks that Kristaps could return early. When you look at how his rehab, some of the reports that came across there, so he's well ahead of schedule. This is going to put him in a place to be able to return now for the Celtics team that's already, like I said, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They recently beat the undefeated at that time Cleveland Cavaliers. And so that was a big thing there when it came down to it. And so it was really good to see that Kristaps Porzingis come back. And the question now is, or what are the expectations for Kristaps Porzingis in his return? And I'm going to be a little bit more realistic about this, right? The Boston Celtics are already a team that's one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They're already a deep team. You got Jason Tatum, who's playing at an all-star level right now. But I think the key thing that Kristaps can bring in his return is just an extra big and some depth there, right? Now, it may take a while to kind of ramp back up, but Kristaps has been a player who's come back pretty quickly from injuries, and he actually makes an impact pretty quickly when he is able to return. You're going to be able to save some time and some travel on old man Al Horford as well, which could be really beneficial for them. And when Kristaps comes back, it's just about getting his rhythm back, helping the team in any way that he can, being solid in those areas. But it's not like Kristaps has to come in and be who he's going to be by the end of the season. The key thing in with this is getting everybody back healthy for the Boston Celtics, having everybody healthy so you can figure out that rhythm. I don't expect the Celtics to take any type of step back, even with integrating Kristaps Porzingis, because he knows how to adapt his game and play with these players. But as the Celtics are ready to try to repeat as champions, it's good that they get Kristaps back. He missed basically just the first month of the season, and now he's going to be able to get going, and we'll see how that conditioning and things look. I think that's going to be a really important part for him. But the Celtics are already beating teams on an average of 9.4 points per game. That's how much they're beating teams by on average. So they're prepared and ready to weather the storm, even if there's a little bit of a learning curve to be able to get him back, in full kind of motion there. It'll be fine. So, Kristaps is a really important part for that team. He's going to help that team strengthen their case and being able to repeat as champions. But overall, we already knew who the Celtics were, right? And, Jason Tatum, who's really kind of adapted his game to play, he sacrificed at times in the last couple of seasons. He's been playing probably the best and most consistent offense that he's been playing. And the Celtics are going to be able to really ride that out to be able to integrate Kristaps in a more kind of take time to integrate him back in there. He's not going to have to come right in, carry a huge workload for that Celtics team to get back on point. And we'll just see how that's going to go for them. So overall, glad to see Kristaps Porzingis get back on the basketball court for his team. And the Boston Celtics, who are already a dangerous team in that Eastern Conference, have just gotten a little bit more dangerous when it all comes down to it. So, the rich get richer in a case like that. And we'll just see how the Boston Celtics use this and ride this out to continue to develop things out there. So with that said, there is another return as well. DeJounte Murray has a target date for his return. Keep in mind, he got injured in the Pelicans' first game back after starting this season, and they've already gotten Trey Murphy back. So now they get DeJounte back. On top of that, he'll be making his return Wednesday night against the Toronto Raptors, which is really good. He's missed 16 games. It'll be 17 overall with that broken hand, which he broke in opening night against the Chicago Bulls. So, getting DeJounte Murray is going to be really good. They already got Trey Murphy III back. CJ McCollum has also been a player that's we've heard good things about him on his rehab tour as well. And so overall, it seems like the Pelicans may start getting some of these players back, and they still got things to figure out in their lineup, even with getting DeJounte Murray, whoever they get back, is because they got a lot of things going on there. There's things going on with Zion, which we'll talk about here in a second. But overall, DeJounte was supposed to be that point guard who would come in, could help stretch the floor, can run that show there. And they got one game. They got a one-game look at him before ultimately him going down for the next 17 games. And so getting him back healthy is going to be important for this team. I don't know how salvageable the New Orleans Pelicans season is. Yes, only 18 games into the season after they play tonight, but this is a team that just has a lot going on. When you look at the injuries to CJ, Zion, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy III, who just came back. Like this Pelicans team got a lot that they need to try to figure out, and it's a lot to incorporate. And keep in mind, they were already a team that was adding such a new piece like DeJounte Murray that you had to learn that learning curve. And so now, through the 17 games of the season, all the injuries that they've had, it's going to be really tough. Eve Missy's out for them as well. Who's been a really good rookie for them so far. They got to figure out the balance of that roster. Are they going to be moving Brandon Ingram and taking advantage of that? So this season for the Pelicans could be one that, for all intents and purposes, may be lost already. And by that, I just mean that, hey, they may not ever be able to figure out their footing, because if they do move Brandon Ingram, who's been on a tear this season, playing really good, top 25 in the league in scoring per game, shooting the ball fairly efficiently for him for three, even, having one of his better years from three as well. What this is going to end up shaking out for that Pelicans team is going to be interesting to watch. But the thing in all this all comes down to Zion. And there's been a lot of talk around Zion Williamson. Shams came out and said that Zion's not even close to return in regards to his hamstring. Then he changed agencies over this weekend. There was an old tattoo video that came out that worried people about the shape that he was in. Turns out that video was was fairly old, so there's that aspect of it. But right now, you're missing Zion for a considerable amount of time. There are already people talking about, could Zion be waived by the New Orleans Pelicans, which I still don't think is going to happen. I don't think you waive a talent like Zion, but at the end of the day, like, Zion's 24 years old. And I was asked over when I did Locked On NBA today, should we be more concerned about Joel Embiid and his injury and his kind of where he is, or Zion Williamson? And the thing is that Joel Embiid, we know what he's going to be when he's on the court, right? We know that he's going to be dominant. He's an MVP candidate. He can put up points. He can score all day. He's a defender, all this type of stuff. Like, when it comes to Zion, Zion is 7 years younger than Joel Embiid. 7 years younger than Joel Embiid. And when you look at it, he hasn't really accomplished shit. Like, outside of Zion Williamson being a physical specimen and just how quick he's able to move at his size, those type of things, what has Zion really accomplished in the NBA? Nothing. We haven't even gotten to see Zion Williamson have a healthy playoffs yet, right? Despite his team being solid over the last couple of years. So, listen, it's not to shit on any player or anything like that, but Zion needs to get his shit together. And that's really what it just boils down to, regardless if it's personal, if it's injury, if it's weight management, whatever it is. If Zion does not take this next phase of his career correct, this is just going to be who Zion is. Zion's going to be one of the most what-if players in the NBA, and it's just going to be because of injuries and the doubt around his desire to be great despite all the physical gifts that he's been given. And so as this Pelican team gets more healthy and it puts a bigger spotlight on just how bad Zion Williamson, the outlook on him is, and no, changing agents isn't that crazy, right? Brandon Ingram changed agents as well over the weekend. Like, sometimes you got to just make a change, and that's what it was reported as, that Zion felt like a change needed to be made there. Great, do it. But the biggest changes you need to be making, big fella, is in your conditioning. Are you attacking your rehab correctly? And I understand no player wants to be hurt at all. I want to be clear on that. Now, I'm not trying to blame players for being injured. It's not like players wake up and say, I want to be hurt today. But at the end of the day, like, you haven't been out there to be on the court for your team. You haven't been able to have a playoff stretch yet. And you're supposed to be this generational physical talent. And the only thing that you've done generational is just have the generational injury management. We've had to usher in a whole new face of injury management, and it's you and Joel Embiid and Lonzo Ball. Like, what? It's really disappointing when it comes down to it. And so, outside of all the story things, not to say that that's supposed to be the end-all, be-all of a basketball player, Zion got to get his shit together. It's really what it just boils down to. And if he doesn't get his shit together, the next phase of his career, which is supposed to be Zion Williamson going into the physical peak of his career, it could be just as disappointing as this phase has been. And so hopefully Zion figures it out. Hopefully the Pelicans figure out what they're trying to do with their team and their roster to make it make more sense. A lot of things up in there, but they got some tough things and tough questions that need to be answered. And I don't know if they're prepared to do that yet because tell you what, you can only keep building around somebody who's not there for so long before you're going to have to start building your team differently. And as something that me, Steve-O, and Kev have all talked about before is that it's going to have to come down to you're going to have to move this roster forward without Zion. And if you keep him on this roster, it's just going to be, well, when Zion's there, great, we get something, but we need to build something solid without him. And if the Pelicans could do that, that's a big question if. I guess we'll see there. Last topic of the day before we go. The Portland Trail Blazers right now have two centers that reportedly could be on the trade block in DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams. When you look at Robert Williams in the season that he's had so far since being able to be activated, a lot of teams reportedly are encouraged by the play of Robert Williams. He's averaging 10 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. He's shooting the ball 75% from the field. Surprisingly enough as well, 50% from three. It's not like he's taking a whole lot there. Over a half a block per game, over a steal per game, and Robert Williams being only 27 years old and dealing with the injuries that he's dealt with over the course of his career are something that, it sucks to say that he was on that Boston Celtics team and helped that team go for a while, right? And so the Trailblazers who are in a place right now of having a lot of pieces on this roster that they can move at the trade deadline. There's some talk in there. Mark Stein talked about this. Is right now the position that they're looking to trade is the center position. With the rise of Donovan Clingan and what he's made, there's made DeAndre Ayton and or Robert Williams available. And so right now there's more confidence inside the Portland Trailblazers that Robert Williams would be easier to move than DeAndre Ayton when you look at the contract of Ayton and the performance of Ayton. And so the Trailblazers are a team that you got to watch at the trade deadline because they could be very active. When you look at the Trailblazers and as many players as they can make available on that trade market when it comes down to it, this is a team that if you need some pieces, you can probably find those pieces on it. Between Anthony Simons, who reportedly they do want to move before the end of the season, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams III. These are all players that could fetch them something back. I'm not saying they can get huge returns for these guys, right? But if the Portland Trailblazers are aggressively shopping these guys leading into the trade deadline for a team that needs some scoring, Anthony Simons, for a team that needs some big production, you got DeAndre Ayton, you got Donovan Clingan. And for a team that needs some overall production, you got Jeremy Grant there, even though I personally think a lot of Jeremy Grant's has empty calorie stats, but we'll see what that brings about when it comes down to it. But watch out for this Portland Trailblazers team at the trade deadline. And there's a lot of teams that you really need to watch. Them, the Brooklyn Nets, the Chicago Bulls to a degree, right? Even the Utah Jazz to a degree with Clarkson and Walker Kessler. There are a lot of teams out here that could be looking to sell a lot of their pieces leading into the trade deadline. And if that does happen, there's some teams that definitely can benefit off of. Now, it's not like you're going to get them for nothing, especially with some of the contracts of these players. But look out for the Portland Trailblazers to be able to help solidify teams' playoff run in February when it comes down to that trade deadline. The December dates coming up where almost everybody except rookies are going to be able to be available to move at that time too. So while it's been crazy quiet on the transaction front at the early part of the season, as it is every year in the first month of the season, we're getting to the place where that may start changing here sooner rather than later with the teams that have pieces available that they can look to move to kind of solidify their race for the flag and Cooper flag and see if your team comes out on top of that. So it's going to be a race to the bottom as well. It's always fun to watch the teams that are battling for position, teams that fluctuate, that are fighting, competing, all those type of things at any part of the season. But another thing that's going to be fun, especially in a draft that's deep as this and has a prize like Cooper flag, is how many teams make moves to clearly make their team worse and increase their chances at getting those lottery odds to get a player like Cooper Flag or a player like Ace Bailey or a player like Asa Newell, player like Dylan Harper. A lot of potential, gems here in this draft that could really help turn around a franchise. And if you're that franchise that's been hovering around the middle for a long time, like my Chicago Bulls, for example, even though the Bulls are too stupid of a franchise to make any moves, but if you're a team that's been hovering around the middle for a few years, this is your time to kind of get out that middle, trade off some of your pieces, bottom out to a degree, and then ride it out for the rest of the season and hope that the lottery is going to be favorable for you. But, hey, we'll continue monitoring that every day here at NBA Central. Make sure you guys are following the show at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow.